Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Kari Lausanesiris and my YouTube channel, grecochess. And we're continuing now the series of facing the chess.com bots. Until now, we have eliminated all 15 beginner bots and the first two of the intermediate bots. And now it is time to face the third of the intermediate bots, which is Hans from Greenland. And let me share my screen with you. Here is a screen, and you see Hans telling us, hey, what's your favorite rock band? Mine is Queen, of course. Well, who cares about the favorite rock band? We're going for the game. Once again, the rules are the same. I face every pot twice, once with white, once with black. If I win, I continue, meaning if I'm white, I'll go to play with black with the same bot, and if I'm black, then it's time for the next video for the next bot with white. If I draw, we have to play the game again, same bot, same colors, until there is a decisive result. And hope this doesn't happen. Once I lose, it's the end of the series. This is going to show how far I was able to go. But now let's start facing Hans from Greenland. The rating of Hans is 1000. And I'm going to start with the white colors. And as always, I start with my e-pawn. I say as always, there are many ways to start. The e-pawn, the d-pawn are okay, the c-pawn. Sometimes you can place your knight to f3, but since I'm used to the e-pawn that leads to a nice, exciting game, I'm going to start with that. The beautiful open chords of a song are the same as the first moves of the game. Perhaps. And this is the Caro-Kann defense of Hans. The pawn goes from c7 to c6. And I'm going to occupy the center. My d-pawn goes to d4. And that is theory until now. What I'm going to do, there are many ways how to continue. I'm going to exchange the pawns, the d5 pawn. Now, again, there are many ways to continue. I'm going to place my bishop on d3. Why is that? I'm more familiar with this opening, so I think I have a better chance. I'm going to push the pawn to c3 so the knight cannot end up in b4. What will I do now? The pawn goes to e5. Quite a few ways to do it, but I'm afraid if I don't take the pawn, pawn goes to e4 and has a very good control of the center. So I'm going to take the pawn first. Hans takes it back. I wonder what should they do. The knight is well protected. The knight wants to exchange the bishop. Usually bishops are more important than knights. I'm going to go for the check on b5. It's blocked by the knight, and at least this helps me develop another piece, since my bishop is not directly threatened. Develop my bishop and pinning the other knight. Both of Hans's knights are pinned. Hans has developed two knights, but both are pinned. And pawn to h5 is not a good idea. If you want to move your h-pawn, better move it to h6 to basically ask my bishop the question. But my bishop doesn't have to deal with it. Great. Time for me to castle kingside, the short castling as it's called. So my rook is ready to enter the game. My knight is painted. Better be careful about that. I'm going now to place my queen on e2. It occupies the e file and also the knight at e7 pins once again, but now I have to take it back. And of course, I'm not going to take the pawn. I don't want to expose my king. I'm going to take the f3 bishop with my queen. By moving the queen to d7, the knight on c6 is pinned, but not absolutely. There's a relative pin, meaning behind is a queen and a king. The knight on e7 is not pinned any longer because it can move without exposing the queen, but I'm going to pin it now with my rook on e1. Let's see what's happening. My bishop is attacked on b5. I could take at c6 and then Hans takes with the queen. I want to continue the pin, placing my bishop on a5. Now, Hans places his queen on g4. I may or may not exchange the queens. If I don't exchange the queens, my bishop on g5 may be lost. Of course, I can move the bishop, but I want the bishop to attack the knight on e7. Currently, this knight on e7 is twice attacked, twice defended, of course, meaning by the king, the bishop. Suppose it's defended by the knight at c6, but not in reality because it's pinned. I think my best option is to change the queens. This opens the h file for Hans, but I don't think that Hans is the position to exploit. You just took my girl, and so did you, Hans. Thank you for your lady. Wait a minute. Your queen is your girl, but my queen is my lady. I thought they were similar values. What can I do? Let's threaten the pawn at b5. Can I? Let's see how you can defend it. Pawn at d5 is threatened by my bishop. The king moving means that the knight is not pinned any longer here. So if I take with my bishop, then the knight will take back. If I take your knight, you'll take it back with my knight, so I still cannot take the pawn. Let's develop my knight here to d2. And now, yes, now the pawn is free. Let's hope there are no catches. Oh, another pawn is free on f7. Why did you have to rain my parade? Because you have no umbrella, Hans. Basically means that you should have thought of it in advance. I wish I could take the pawn at g4. Any way I can take it? If I put my bishop on e6, it's threatened. How can you defend it? You can put, I don't think you can easily defend it. You put your knight, I'm taking your knight. Any danger here? Let me take your pawn, and now I'm 3 pawns ahead. Careful, my friend. Let's see how careful do I need to be. I'm taking your bishop on f2. What can you do? You can check, of course, but you don't win too much. I go back to g1. I have to be a little bit careful about my two bishops on the same line. If you could put, for example, a rook on g6, they would be in danger, might protect the pawn, but I wouldn't want to reach a situation. But fortunately, that cannot happen because of your pawn on g7. Let's see how can I continue. I want to develop even further. My knight goes to b3. And by the way, Hans has his rook at a8 that is almost nowhere to go. That is something that better be avoided. Rook at a4 threatens pawn at b1. Excuse me, my pawn at b2. Not that important, but why not defend it? Because then the c3 pawn is unprotected, so I'm going to defend it now for now. And now we have something nice. Can I take advantage? Because the two knights on the same diagonal on f4, c6. What if I put my bishop on d7? I'm threatening to take one of your knights. Well, you save the one, I'm taking the other, but You might be able to take my bishop if you push your pawn, but still I'm a pawn ahead. You didn't even take advantage of that. You had this chance. So now I'm saving my bishop, attacking your rook. You saw it, you save your rook. I wish I could check you, but your rook on f8 doesn't allow me to safely check you here. I'm going to put my rook on d1, so I'm controlling both d and e files, the two central ones that are completely open. You place your rook on f7. What does this mean? And by that I mean, what chances does it give me? I want to place one of my rooks on the 8th rank. If I put the rook on d8, then king goes to c7 and has a double threat. But on the other side, the bishop protects. But let's first put my rook on e8. And I'm pinning your knight on c8. Oh, thanks. You're giving me your rook. Of course, you'll take it back with your pawn, but I'm winning an exchange. And now I'm going to to attack once again your knight. Since I'm ahead by quite a lot of material, I could easily start the exchange game. Meaning I take your knight, you take my rook. I take your rook, you take my rook, but I'm going to lose a little bit of material. Let me do something else first. Am I in danger of a back rank? I don't think so. Let me put my bishop on e4, and then I'm going to put it on f5, if you allow me. Yep, now your knight is attacked 3 times. There's no back rank because I have the f2 square to escape. If I didn't have it, there would be danger. We're going to do all the exchanges now. I'm going to sacrifice first my bishop, then the rook. And yes, you cannot even take back. Wonderful. If only I could place my knight somewhere to support the c8 rook, I could move the other one to e7. I cannot do it now because then the rook would be lost. Knight goes to e6 to cover the square c7. Let me block your king from going even lower. Nothing really matters. Anyone can see nothing really matters. Nothing really matters to me. That's one way to put it. My knight goes to d4 to cover the square c6. Let's see if I can check from there. Go to constraint now. Your king can only go to the 7th rank. Now you can only go to the 8th rank. Rook goes to h6. Be ready for the mate. And yes, here we are. Checkmate. Good game. Another one bites the dust, I guess. And the first spot that did not ask me for another game, but we're going to play the other game. But let's first review this game. Let's see what does the computer of chess.com have to say about it. It seems that for a few moves, Hans was able to keep the game more or less even, but after a while, I went way ahead. I had 89.5% accuracy, Hans had 80.9, and according to chess.com, my game was rated 1950, while Hans was 1650. I don't think we had the bot play that well. 1650 was quite good, even though I believe that these numbers are a little bit exaggerated. How did we do about moves? None of us had brilliant or great. Best, 18 for me, 15 for Hans. For excellent, 14 versus 10. Good, 4 versus 7. Book moves, my first 5, Hans' first 4. Inaccuracies, Hans had 5 versus 2 of mine. Mistakes, 1 each, and Hans had 1 blunder. Let's see what were these moves. going to click the Start Review. Here you're going to see what does the computer think. How does the computer evaluate? Plus means white is better, minus means that black is better. The first 5 moves for me and 4 for Hans were book moves. We'll go quickly through them. You see here, it says the Caro Card Defense. That's how it's called. It's named after 2 chess players whose last name, the one was Caro and the other was Khan. Now, finally, Hans leaves the book, as it's called, meaning plays a move that is not in the theory, but not a bad move, an excellent move. I take the pawn. Computer thinks it's the best move I could do. And yes, that is the best for Hans. Not the best for me, but not bad either. That's what he thinks. Ideally, the computer would rather have me develop my knight from G1 to F3. Yes, it blocks. Now develop. An inaccuracy, the first inaccuracy of Hans. I'm pinning, but computer thinks it's inaccuracy. It would rather have my queen go to E2. This is a mistake. Yes, that was Hans' mistake, clearly. Of course, ideally, the pawn should go to H6. I had mentioned that during the game. Castling, pinning my knight. The computer would rather have me push my pawn from H2 to H3. Why didn't I do it? Because that creates what's called a hook. In the future, Hans might have the chance to put the queen and the bishop in the same diagonal from C8 to H3 and sacrifice the bishop for 2 pawns, the G and the H pawns, and that would expose my king quite a lot. That's why I didn't want to play this move. Because now I have to change. Little by little, I start getting some advantage, 1.27, you see already. Yes, the best move was to keep the pin by moving my bishop to A4. Queen goes to G4, and the computer thinks that this was the best move for Hans. Because either I lose my bishop, or I exchange queens, or I'll have to do another move that would be a defensive one. Yes, the best thing I could do is exchange the queens. They would rather have me develop my knight from B1 to D2. Development of pieces is very important. Now I do it, and now the computer doesn't like it. The computer would rather have me use my bishop to take the knight on E7. And the computer thinks that this is a blunder. Well, it lets me get the free pawn on D5, but I was surprised in the previous game when my opponent gave me free queen, the computer did not think that was a blunder. While now for a pawn, it thinks it's a blunder. In any case, I take the pawn, and from now on my head, plus 294, you see. Take another pawn, 366, and now the computer would rather have my knight go to the center instead of me threatening another pawn. But I took the pawn, and I'm at 471. Decent move, says the computer. I'm not sure why this is a decent move. Before, when it gave me a pawn, it was a blunder. Now it gives me a whole bishop and just a decent move. My advantage is increasing, and the computer thinks it was an excellent. The problem with this move is that the rook at A8 has almost nowhere to go. It can only go back and forth A8, from A8 to A7 and back. And although you don't lose material, positionally, this is a bad move. Or at least it's a bad position to be with. From now on, even if I don't play the very best moves, I'm continuing increasing my advantage. Let's see. The computer says okay, because the computer could have defended the knight with the king going to B7. Now the Hans gives me an entire knight, and the computer thinks that the move that gave me the knight is excellent. Again, Hans could have taken back my bishop, but it would lose a pawn if they move from the pawn from B6 to B5, because there is nowhere my bishop could have gone to survive. Little by little, my advantage becomes 733. And this move, what does it gives me an extra exchange. I had already quite a lot of material advantage. Now I'm getting an exchange, meaning I take the rook for my bishop. And the computer thinks that was one of the top moves in this position. I wouldn't agree. Advantage is 799. And I think here I made a mistake. I had made in 5 moves. I was so much focused on winning the knight on c8, I forgot that Hans gave me the knight on c3 for free. I should have taken it. But I was winning in any case. Of course, in a more advanced board, this kind of forgetfulness may not be forgiven. Now we're at the end. Instead of having mate, I have 839. And now I'm mate in 5 again. You see the m4 means now I have mate in 4 moves. In 3 moves. In 4 moves, I go back again. In 3 moves. In 2 moves. In 1 move. And now it is mate. So that was my first game with Hans when I had white and Hans had black. You did it. Nice checkmate. Okay, Hans, and now we'll reverse the colors. You look at the white, and I have the black. And we're going to allow Hans to start the game since Hans has the white pieces. And Hans starts with the e-pawn the same way I had started. Now I'm going to play symmetrically with the e-pawn. Hans develops the knight from g1 to f3, and they will develop mine from b8 to c6. The Italian opening, many ways to defend. The way I'm mostly familiar is place my bishop on e7 to protect the diagonal that goes from h4 to d8. Hans develops now the other knight. I'm going to push my pawn to d6. So I open the diagonal for my bishop. I'm going now to pin Hans's knight. And here I have a nice attack. If you see my knight is attacking the queen, had saved the queen. Not only that, did not even allow me to fork, because if he had played anything other than queen goes to d3 or d1, I would take the pawn on c2 and eventually win the rook. With the lower bots, that would have happened, but not now. What can I do now? If I take the knight, if Hans replies the queen, threatens me with mate. Not with maybe goes f7 here, and it will be quite dangerous, especially if I don't see it and I'm going for the fork. But I'm going to see it, because otherwise, if I do nothing, for example, if I develop my knight to f6 as I wanted to, then he takes my knight, I take the knight, and I lose my pawn. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take Hans's knight and see how he replies. With a pawn, exposing the king. I'm going now to threaten the bishop. Yep, not a good idea, because I forgot about my pawn on b7. I'm going to target my rook, but Hans now is ahead, has an extra pawn. Let me see what I can do. If I castle, it's quite dangerous, because knight, the rook can go to g1 and threaten my king. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to place my queen here on d7, hoping to put it at h3. I must do something. I'm going to take the knight. I don't want Hans to be attacking. Hans is attacking quite seriously. Until now, Hans has played quite good moves. Not always, but quite good moves. Now I'm going to put my queen on h3 and threaten the pawn at f3. To take my pawn back. Can I check from f3? I don't want to exchange queens. Or do I want? Yep, I want to exchange queens because then I have the fork. I'm going to take, I was thinking of how to attack with my queen, but if we exchange queens, I take the queen on d3, he takes back with a c2 pawn. No, he can take it back with his bishop at a6, and then I cannot fork. So I'm going to do now is I'm going to attack his rook on h1. If he put, what can he put in order? What happens if I'm going now, I have to be careful. I don't want to exchange queens. I am attacking, I'm a pawn behind, so I'd rather keep the queens to continue attacking. I cannot take the rook. I can put my queen on e4 and check. Then Hans, if Hans is not careful, I have the fork. If Hans puts the queen, of course, I take it with my knight. If defends with the bishop, thunderbolts and lightning, very, very frightening. I'm not sure if this was a joke or serious. I'm going to take your pawn at c2, and I'm evening the material difference. What would happen if I check with my knight on f3? The king can go on e2. That's the only defense. And then I check with my queen from e4. Any chance for any fork? Not that I can see. But I can check from here. King goes to d1. Of course, Hans cannot castle any longer. What can I do? Can I bring... I'm going to take the pawn on f4, so now I'm ahead by a pawn. Hans, of course, is threatening to move the pawn from d2, and then I have to be careful about this discovery. I already blundered in a previous game when I didn't see on time the discovery. What would happen if I put my queen on d4 and threaten the rook on a1? Rook can go to b1. Maybe I can take the pawn. Okay, you reply with a check. I don't want to take it with my pawn because check. No, I'm going to place my king on f8. In any case, I cannot castle. Queen side and king side is not going to be helped too much because of the open g file. For the bishop, it's a good idea to go there, but I'm taking now a free rook. Is there any danger? Let's give a look. I don't want to take the rook and then be checkmated next move. My rook now can take the pawn at b3. Is it safe enough to take it? The queen can go to here and threaten me to a6. it's going to be quite dangerous if I allow the queen to go to this square. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my knight here, threatening the bishop. My knight goes to d4. Yes, I don't like the bishop being there. Yes, the pawn is also dangerous, but not so dangerous, I hope. I need to give some luft, some air to my king, and it's not so easy to do it because the bishop is there. Okay, yes, in case my rook leaves the 8th rank and the queen ends up here, my king needs to have somewhere to go. So I'm going to push my pawn to f7 and also give some space to my rook on h8, because currently where it is, it has very little space to move. h5, yes. Sorry to see it. I'm going now to attack the pawn at c6. It's quite advanced, and it's better if it doesn't stay. And of course, Hans sees it and defends the queen. Now I cannot even take the pawn at b3. What can I do? I want now to exchange queens. Now I have the material. Now I really want to exchange queens. If Hans is interested in that. After exchange queens, the pawn at c6 is vulnerable. See what Hans willing to do. h6. Okay. I can exchange queens. Anything better? Well, I could take the pawn at f2, but I'd rather not have to worry about the queens. Just took my girl. Yep. Thank you for your lady. Once again, your queen is your girl, but my queen is my lady. I thought they had the same age. Okay, I'm going to take this pawn before it takes mine at g7 and threatens the promotion. What can we do now? First of all, let's get rid of this advanced pawn, although by now, without a queen, it's not so dangerous. Have an extra rook. Let me occupy the g file. My bishop on e7 is what is called a bad bishop. It's blocked 3 out of the 4 directions by the 2 pawns, the king, and I can only go back to d8, where it's blocked by c7. If material was the same, that would be a huge disadvantage. But now for me, I have so much extra material. I don't even need a bishop, but why not use it? I'm going to liberate it by moving my pawn to f6. That is my pawn. That's e7. Doesn't make too much difference, but why not save it? Took my pawn on h6. Okay, you want to take it, take it. And it's a check, yes. King goes to f7. Rook threatens to go down. Now, what can your rook do? I'm going now to threaten your pawn, and also if you take my pawn, I'm taking your bishop. You tried to save your bishop, but you had no idea where it needs to go, and instead you gave me a free bishop. Thanks. Let me take another pawn while I still can. Another pawn. Now I have a lot of extra material. One rook and quite a lot of extra pawns. One rook, one extra bishop, yes. I want now to constrain your king on the 8th rank. I want to check you here. Perhaps it might have been a better idea to exchange the rooks. I'm going to take your rook with what's called a steward, meaning king and the rook are the same diagonal, and I'm going now to take your rook. I'm saving my own rook. I think now we're very near the mate. If you went to the 8th rank, it was mate immediately. Now, what I need to do? I wish I could put one of my rooks on the 5th rank to block you there, but my pawn doesn't allow it. I'm going to bring the king near to constrain you. Again, nothing really matters. Okay. It doesn't matter to you, it doesn't matter to me. I'm going to constrain your king. It has only 2 squares to go, yes. Have to be careful because the king You think it doesn't have Hans's king doesn't have too many squares to go. If they become 0, we're talking about a stalemate, which I'm not willing to allow. Now it's mate because your king has only 1 square to go, and that is mate. It's mate because my king below made sure you couldn't go the 5th rank. And we need a 51 moves to complete the game. And once again, let's review the game. Let's see how did we do. What does the computer think? Because even if I win, it doesn't necessarily mean that I played well. I'd rather learn from my mistakes, especially at the intermediate level. And as we go on, it's going to be tougher to cover for my mistakes. I may end up paying very dearly if I continue making too many mistakes. I have 88% accuracy, 79.44 hands. Once again, my game was rated 1950, a little bit less than yesterday, where both of my games were 2000. Hans has 1150, better than your own, but not so good as 1600 the first time. And let's see how, various categories. I had 2 great moves, best 26 for me versus 14 for Hans. Excellent, 17 Hans versus 13 of me. 4 good each of us, 3 books. Inaccuracies, 5 for Hans, 1 for me. 2 mistakes each of us, and 1 miss for Hans, but no blunders for either one of us. And let's see what exactly happened. Move my move. First 3 moves were book moves. Yes, it's Italian game I just called. Not a bad move to c3, but the computer would rather have you attack with your pawn to d4. The computer wants me to place my knight at f6. The reason I'm reluctant to do it is because perhaps a bishop or a knight can end up here and create quite a lot of trouble, I would say. Not too much, there are ways to defend it, but if possible, I want to avoid having to defend, because if you don't defend correctly, then you would be in real trouble. So to d5, of course, moving the same piece twice isn't a good strategy for all of us to keep in mind. Pinning. Is the computer would rather have the bishop achieve my knight, so my knight goes in. This is a great move. The only move, I don't think this is the only, although it was great. Look what's happening. A knight threatens the queen. The white knight cannot take mine because then I'm taking the queen. Also, if white is not careful, I'm attacking the pawn at c2, which will give me a fork, meaning if I take it, I check the king, and then I threaten the rook. But white plays the best possible move, and so I cannot do anything. I take the knight, yes, the best move. My knight, the computer wanted me for so long to advance my knight. Now that I do it, it doesn't like it. Yes, it'd rather attack the bishop because now I unnecessarily lost a pawn. Still, I'm ahead. Although I have 1 less pawn, I'm ahead by 1.19. Computer doesn't like my queen. It says I'd rather put my knight there, but I want my queen to land in h3, and later that would be very helpful. Yes, the computer would rather have the knight go to e2 and exchange with my knight on d4, since my knight is an attacking piece. Yes, the computer now would like my queen to go there. I want to do it, but I want first to get rid of this knight that could be attacking. Yes, and this is my second great move. Queen goes to h3. Can't stop from winning material. Let's see how this happen. Pawn goes to f4. And now really, computer thinks it's a mistake. My advantage goes all the way up to 315. But did I play correctly? Let's see. Yes, I played the best possible move. Queen to g2. I'm ahead by 315. Now I'm ahead by 533 with the queen going to f1, but white didn't have too many choices to save the rook at h1. That was one of them. Queen goes to e4. Yes, the best move. If the bishop went back to e2 as the computer likes, then my knight could go to c2 and I would win the rook. So I don't think it was such an inferior move as the computer thinks. I take the extra pawn, yes. Knight goes to f3, checks. The only move, king goes to e2. Computer would rather have me check with the knight instead of the queen, but still I'm 4-3 ahead. Computer didn't like the fact that I got the free pawn. If the knight went to d4 and I could move again, I would have very good chances, but still I'm quite ahead. Excellent move, but my advantage becomes smaller to d4 check. Okay. Yes, I played the best move and I gave up castling rights. I'm so much ahead, not in material yet, but in position that it's not that bad if I lose castling rights. It's even worse if I defend with a pawn going to c6, then he can take with the bishop. I give a pawn for free. And this is not just an inaccuracy, as a computer says, that was a real mistake. But what else could Hans do? Otherwise, no, I couldn't take the bishop for free because queen defends it. Rook should have gone to b1 exactly, but I think it's more than an inaccuracy. I think it's a blunder. I take it. I'm 5-11 ahead. My knight goes back. And yes, I take it. You would rather have me take the free pawn, but and then also I threatened the bishop at c1, but I didn't like a bishop to be so far ahead in me. Not a good idea. I wanted to give luft to my king, and once my king goes to f7, the other rook at h8 has much more freedom. Threatening the pawn. White Hans defends it, not only defends it, but also blocks my king from going to f7 as I was planning. And I'm offering in a change of queens now that I'm ahead in material by a rook and a pawn. I want exchanges. That's true what the computer says. Queen to e6 would have been extremely dangerous. Exchange and took the pawn. The pawn, little by little, I'm removing white's material. I'm already 527. I don't think anything dramatic will happen from now on. That is why I'm not going to talk too much about what's happening. This was a blunder. This move is dropping a bishop, although it doesn't change the losing position. But why does a computer think it's excellent? I see nothing excellent. The bishop could have been saved in any of these three squares, c1, d2, e3, at least for the time being. So I don't understand why it was placed on f4. Continuing my advantage because all the time. 8-17 you see until now. What would happen if instead of checking with my a rook, I checked with a g rook? The rook would have gone here. No, not even be a check, but give a look. If I check here with my rook, the king would have to go to c2 not to lose the rook. I would take the rook perhaps, but I don't think it's that different. The best move. And now I have this X-ray, the skewer. That X-ray attack will win you material. Of course, will win material. I have spoken about that. Although the game has been decided, that's one tactical idea. It's good for the people watching this channel to be aware of it. It's good. All these tactical things like pins, forks, skewers, it's good to know them in theory, but even better in practice to be aware of them. Apply it when you have the chance, and also don't ever give your opponent the chance to use them. Now we're near the meat. Now on, you see the M. How long did we have these M's? When did we first have the M? From now on, I have mate in 5 moves, in 4 moves, in 3 moves, in 2 moves, No, I hear him delaying a little bit. In one move, and the game is over. This concludes the game against Hans from Greenland. And we're going to continue the next video with the next bot. Let's see which one is going to be. It's going to be Aziz from Nigeria. And the rating of Aziz is 1100. So we've eliminated all the bots with ratings of 1,000 or less. And we're going to face an 1100 bot Aziz from Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this video, defeating cars from Greenland. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for the subscribers, for the people that have clicked the like button and the people that have left some nice comments. See how far we can go? As I have mentioned earlier, all it takes for me is one loss and the series is over. But that's it for now, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching and for viewing. Hope you've learned something out of that, because I'm trying to be as instructive as possible and explaining my moves. But for the time being, goodbye.